I was 6 months old when my father left us, and my mother ended up marrying a man from Oklahoma named Marshall Clonch. I think from the very beginning he resented me, and my mother reinforced that for some reason, which would have been better if she hadn't. But he didn't like it because I didn't have his name, and Mother wouldn't allow me to be adopted, and with good reason, I think. And he just didn't like the extra expense that I was. He didn't like the extra expense my mother was. They had started to go to California to find work, and we were I was sitting in the back seat of the car in Amarillo, Texas, listening to them talk about what they were going to do with me. The next memory I have is being put on a train to go back to Alva, Oklahoma to live with my grandmother and go to the first grade. I remember being, as a 6-year-old, being fearful of the train ride and of strangers and of what could happen on a train. After that year, I remember my Uncle Chester drove me in his truck to Oklahoma City for the second grade. Between the second and third grade, we moved out to Lake Overholser, and we stayed there till I was out of third grade. Starting in the fourth grade, we'd moved to North Meridian in Oklahoma City. And when the fourth grade was over, I remember my parents putting me on a bus by myself to go to Jonesboro, Arkansas. I wasn't really afraid, except that loneliness I got when I was riding the bus and looking out across the fields and wondering what lay ahead of me. I was always apprehensive as a child, what's going to happen next, and trying to control it, and children have not much control. Arriving in Jonesboro, I stayed with my aunt and uncle, my father's brother, on a farm, and that was the first time I had seen my father since I was born. My parents came and got me at Christmas time. We went to Alva, Oklahoma, where we stayed in a small trailer next to a gas station because we had to use the restroom in the gas stations. I went to school there for about a month. After that month, we moved to Borger, Texas. Finished out the 5th grade there. Then we moved out to a place called Sunset Heights near Phillips, Texas. After the 6th grade, I was put on a train and went to California once again to stay with my same aunt and uncle who had migrated there for work. After the 7th grade, I went back to Phillips, Texas again, where I spent the 8th and 9th grades there. I remember between the 8th and 9th grades, I had a job in the summertime, shining shoes in the barber shop, and I don't really recall what happened, but that was the first time I ran away. I just packed up my stuff, took the key by the barber shop one night, walked across the canyons to the highway, and caught a ride here and there, and finally ended up in Alva, Oklahoma to stay with my aunt and uncle. My mother told me later if I just told her, she'd have let me go. We came back, went to the 9th grade, and after the 9th grade, I think they decided that it would be best if I went to California and stayed with my aunt and uncle and went to high school there. And I made enough money to buy my way back to Phillips, Texas. And by that time, they were moving to Midwest City, Oklahoma, because my father had got transferred back. So I ended up going back through Alva and going on to Midwest City, where I spent my 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. Being rejected is what I felt like. And I was, you know. When someone would just rather you not be there, you feel it. You feel that way. It's a hard thing to deal with, but I think after a while I just become numb to it. I just thought this is the way it is. You know, I can be older every year. Sooner or later I'll be gone. The home life didn't change. I don't think it changed over the whole period of me growing up because he was just him, you know. And if a guy will forget his own kids that he fathered, he's certainly not going to take a stray in. And that's really what he called me, a stray. In the summer between my junior and senior year in high school, my mother had started church and bugged me and bugged me and bugged me to go with her. And finally, after 2 or 3 months, I decided to go. So in October 1953, started my senior year in high school, I went with her one Sunday night. And I didn't think I was open to anything. Wasn't interested in anything. I was just going to please my mother. But sitting there in the pew, I decided, for some reason, I don't remember the sermon, I don't remember what they were talking about, I don't remember anything. I decided that I better start the church and get saved. And I asked God to save me there, sitting in the pew. Why I made that decision? It was almost an instantaneous decision, and I think God has worked in my life like that. I think my mother talked to this guy's mother and asked her to ask him to take me under his wing and help me learn what to do in church. And Dale had a girlfriend, and he wanted a double date. And so he kept wanting me to double date with him, so he kept bringing around these girls and introduced me to them, and I went with several and met Sandra. He brought her around. I met her, but it was before Christmas. I don't really remember how long before we started dating, but it was in the spring of my senior year. And we kept going out, and we started going out every night and everything. And then I went into the service in August of 1954. And one of the reasons I went into the Army was I was being pressured to get out of the house. And they were still drafting people. So in 6 months, the Korean War GI benefits were going to stop. So I just joined up and went and got my benefits, got my college education, and did it. Which I was the first and only one in my family that graduated from college. In December, I came home for Christmas and I decided to ask her to marry me. So on the way to church, I pulled up in front of this grocery store and asked her to marry me. Choosing God and choosing her, those two decisions were the best day of my life I ever made. And one of the desires of my heart after I started church was to have a godly woman that would live with me all the days of my life. And next year will be our 60th wedding anniversary. He answered, he gave me the desires of my heart. And that's been one of the things that I still thank him for today, after 59 years of being married, that God is good enough to give us the good desires of our heart. I had already decided that if I had kids, I wanted them to, if at all possible, to go to the same school, all through through elementary, junior, and senior high school, and live in the same house and grow up in the same house. I wanted my children to have a stable home life, to have a stable opportunities, to give them the opportunities in life that no one ever gave me. Marshall, he always told me that I'd never amount to anything. And why he did, I don't know, and I didn't understand then. But I think that's one thing that caused me to want to succeed later in life. Looking back on it, my childhood I thought was normal because I didn't know any different. And I think I don't have sympathy for people as much as I should because, you know, if you live through it, they can too. I think anybody can change. You can't let your past determine your future because you can always do what you want to do. You can take control of your life. You can make the right decisions. It's possible to do because I know I did it. And I'm extremely thankful to God for giving me the ability and the courage and the control to change my life and make it different.